countries with the war crime.
It is what do war crimes.
Peace, what we now call aggression.
This is the war Hosea.
There was a determination to take that lesson out of World War II, that intervention into the territory of other states is an action that should be prevented and should be punished. I want to talk to you tonight about what I see as the current state of play in that regard, just to express some of my own concerns.
Dump that fiat money.
Hillary mentioned to you that most recently in the UN context, at least, I was the UN Special Rapporteur on extrajudicial executions. My wife always says to me, don't use that term extrajudicial executions unless you're in a small classroom with international lawyers, because it's meaningless. And she would translate it as unlawful killings, which gives you a sense of how broad the focus of that mandate potentially is, any unlawful killings around the world. But I want to mention just two personal entry points, I guess, to the material that I want to deal with tonight. The first, shortly after I became Special Rapporteur in 2004, was an exchange that I initiated with the United States government, focusing on the killing of a number of people in Yemen at the end of 2002 by a drone strike, something that is now very familiar to us. I'm not going to talk about that problem at any great length, but this was
the drones. They over here now.
I took up with the United States the key legal question.
Watch till people start to blow it up.
That is, what was the basis, the legal basis on which you decided you could do this, to simply fire a missile into a car outside Sana'a in Yemen, when there was no armed conflict going on in or with Yemen. That exchange with the United States led to very little, other than a very large paper trail with the United States saying that this was not a matter that should concern the UN Human Rights Council, that this was a matter relating to armed conflict, and therefore not a human rights issue. That happened to contradict the position that they had taken in respect to virtually every other conflict in the world, in relation to which I had, or my predecessors had intervened and raised human rights related issues, and also applied the law of armed conflict. But the US resisted that. So I was grateful to the US because they sort of kept the issue on my agenda, and it stayed there until the end of my mandate 6 years later, and has now, I'm delighted to say, been taken up by my successor, and I hope will be a very live issue in the months ahead. The second event, which is relevant, was a visit that I paid to Afghanistan in May of 2008. I went to Kandahar city. I was informed of a killing, merely 2 people, pretty small in the overall scale of events in Afghanistan, which had occurred just a couple of months before I arrived. What was interesting about it was that these 2 gentlemen, referred to by the unfortunate name of their occupations as the chicken butchers, the killing of these chicken butchers was very contentious. I met very soon after my arrival in Kabul with the Minister of Defence, and the Minister of Defence said to me in a fairly strange sort of way, yes, like you, Mr. Alston, I too am very concerned about killings being undertaken in the country by certain unidentified forces who do not appear to belong to any state grouping of which we are aware. And I said, you mean independent militia groups? And he said, no, I mean militia groups that are controlled by external actors. Let me just leave it at that. It turned out that these chicken butchers were in fact killed by according to the information that I pieced together after speaking to various commanders of the International Security Assistance Force, ISAF, speaking to leaders of the American command there and the head of intelligence in Afghanistan and so on, I was able to piece together very clearly that these killings were undertaken by a CIA-led task force that operated, in fact, out of a villa that used to be occupied by Mullah Omar, the shadowy leader of Taliban Afghanistan. And this task force basically carried out the work of the CIA in eliminating individuals who were placed on one of the famous kill or capture lists. I then followed up when I was in the United States on an official visit, met with the Inspector General rather of the CIA, who took voluminous notes of everything that I said, and then I said to him, will you be getting back to me at some point? And he said, oh no, you don't understand, Mr. Alston, we don't get back to people, but we certainly collect information. Thank you very much. So I mentioned those two incidents, really anecdotal in a sense, because they came together to spark a much
we've already been telling y'all about the drones. We've already told y'all about the injustices. We already told y'all about the new universal human rights, because there's no human rights here in America to get done away with that. You get away with the civil rights because you're civilians, because civilians are cattle, and y'all have no gold to pay for your houses and cars. So there's nothing to exterminate or kill you or put you in captivity and have you do the bidding. And so this guy here is this Australian national community, you know. And so it's back about nationality. And so I'm looking at this thing and saying Asia Pacific, right? But no, sorry, it says Australian National, Australian National University. So even then, there's nationality in that. But you want to call yourselves Black African Americans. But what I'm looking at too, if somebody's willing to, I see AsiaPacific.org. I'm looking at AsiaticAtlantic.org because we are the Asiatic, the originals. The original Aborigines, and so you know, somebody shoot back at me, maybe we can start our own Asiatic National University, you know, because they're talking about these nations are fighting about suppressing us anyway, and so just something to think about, folks.
Have long been talked about.
Peace.
It's generally agreed that the invention by the West